All right, hey folks. So today's video, we're going to continue the discussion on fasting, and I'll be talking to you about my favorite form of fasting. What is the one form of fasting which I've consistently had the most success with over the last 15 years that I've practiced fasting in some form or another? So last video, I kicked off with a warning about regular fasting and this idea that when people save all or most of their calories for the evening, what they're doing is over time, they are training themselves to want lots of calories before bed. Essentially, they're promoting binge eating behavior if they're already predisposed to that. I received some interesting comments which made me think I need to clarify this a bit more. The comeback via some of the comments was to say that people have used this approach and they actually like it. They've used it to cut and they're having a lot of success with it, which is perfectly reasonable. However, this is where I feel I need to interject and add some further clarification to what the problem is. The issues that I detailed in the last video do not occur shortly after changing to this way of eating. So if you utilize this approach a couple of times a year for a cut, or perhaps this is your first big cut, then you're likely not going to see these problems occur. Why? Well, because of something called entrainment. Entrainment is the adjustment of the body's own behavior to be in line with external stimulus. So in this case, the behavior is when and how much per sitting you eat, and the external stimulus is when and how much food you allow yourself. Entrainment takes time, especially if you're an adult, because you're basically training yourself away from a lifetime of other habits. If you just switch to this way of eating, you'll likely see some success because it's different to what you were doing before, and you are fasting through when you would normally eat. So if you normally eat 3 squares, 9 in the morning, 1 in the afternoon, 6 at night, and you decide to just fast for the majority of the day and eat at night, well, you're going to instantly see some success because you are fasting right the way through the usual times where you would normally eat, because that behavior is not yet entrained. However, at a certain point, these new eating patterns of eating a lot of food late at night, they become entrained. So you are no longer fasting through the portions of the day where you would normally eat. Actually, you are just eating on what is now your normal schedule. So you gain no benefits. You're back to square one. The benefit has been lost. This is super important to understand. Initially, you will get the benefit because your eating schedule is different from before, and you're fasting through the portions of the day where you would normally be hungry. At a certain point, and this may take years in some people, that way of eating will just be absolutely normal. We have now been aware of fasting for long enough that there are people out there who haven't had a breakfast before 12 o'clock in what has been years. So we are at that point now where we are looking at the long-term effects of fasting. And this is why I need to add clarification to the video, because this is not a topic which I've heard people talk about before. So because it's quite new, we haven't been seeing these issues before. This behavior may take years to occur, but when it occurs, then you have to understand you are no longer deriving benefit from this eating schedule. You are just eating when you would normally eat. And as a result, you are eating all the calories you normally would, just at this different time. You are back to eating all the calories you normally would with no advantage, because you're only getting hungry late at night. There is no advantage of fasting anymore. So what is clear to me is 3 things. Firstly, fasting is an excellent strategy for some people. It's awesome. You create a massive deficit if you spend some time just fasting through periods where you would normally eat. The second thing that's clear to me is daily fasting does have its downsides, because eventually, after a while, you will train yourself to want larger and larger meals at certain portions of the day when you allow yourself to eat, and then you will no longer get a benefit from the fast, because you are no longer fasting through when you would normally eat. You are just eating when you would normally eat. It just so happens your normal eating pattern is to eat before bed, for example, or from 12 till 8, whatever your fasting schedule is. The third thing that's clear to me is, if we are to gain the benefit of fasting, and fasting is great, love it, we should vary the schedule and not allow this entrainment to actually occur. All of that leads me to the form of fasting which I've had the most success with over the last 15 years, and that is quite simply a 24-hour fast done on a non-set, non-determined schedule. So that could be 1 to 3 times a week, and it could be from 6 to 6, it could be from 9 to 9, it could be from 12 to 12. It's just on a very random schedule so that no entrainment is allowed to incur. All you do is you just wipe off 24 hours worth of calories. You never get used to when that's occurring. You grit your teeth, you go all out for that 24-hour period. You never really allow that eating pattern to become entrained, so you are always getting the benefit from it. And in this video, I laid out why that, for me, is my favorite eating schedule in the long term. I think where people get into these problems that I highlighted in the last video is they've been doing this eating schedule for what has been maybe months and years, and they are now entrained. They've lost all the benefits of fasting through the periods of the day where they would normally be hungry. Where people go wrong is they get into this perpetual cutting cycle where they are constantly just in this mode of cutting and then binging and cutting and binging. And all that does is it perpetuates itself over time. So over time, they go back to this fasting schedule, which then leads to more binging, which then reinforces the binging, which leads to more binging and more fasting. And they never actually break out of this cycle. I hope you guys now understand what I was talking about in the last video. I feel like this concept really needs to be fleshed out, because in the grand scheme of things, we are actually still quite new to this whole daily fasting Martin Birkin way of doing things. But I think there are some definite downsides, because I've seen them firsthand in people that I speak to every day. My favorite way of fasting is something which is absolutely random, catches the body off guard, and you never get used to it. That way you retain the benefits of fasting through periods of time where you would normally eat. Hopefully that got you thinking. Right, folks, I'll see you in the next one. Take care.